Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. It's not a good Monday. I'm not too happy on this Monday. A multitude of reasons. Vikings lost. They didn't lose. They got embarrassed. They got trounced. They made me look like an idiot on TikTok. And now the whole community thinks I'm an idiot. I could care less. Bunch of... Some of the accounts just make me laugh. I lost by 1.3 in our Dynasty League this week. So I'm coming in kind of fired up this week.
Mm-hmm.
Right before Monday Night Football, November 21st, 3:30 p.m. Lucas and Cameron hanging out with you tonight. Cameron, I hope your Monday's been better than mine.
It's my last day of work for the week because I'm traveling tomorrow.
There you go. That's a plus.
And so it's just been crazy busy because we sent out an email. I'm like our problem solver for one of our things. And so they sent out an email saying, Cameron's going to be gone the rest of the week. So I had like an influx of emails where everyone's like, I might have this problem later in the week. How will I solve it? I'm like, if you might have it, then don't do it. Like,
don't ask me.
I was like,
quit asking questions. If you don't need me, don't bother me.
Yep. And then in our other Dynasty League that me and Lucas are in, Lucas destroyed me 155-96. And earlier in the year, I would have thought it's good, but I made a trade where I sent a first and DeAndre Hopkins for Tyreek Hill. I thought the first was a late first, but it was actually my first round pick.
It's going to be an early first.
Very disappointing. It's going to be a top 4 pick. So sad. I did not realize it till the morning after. So,
you know what? Why you made that trade. I saw that. I'm like, wait, this is going to be a top 5 pick.
Yep. You live and you learn. So
it is what it is.
Word to the wise. Make sure your trades are actually what you think your trades are before you send them out.
FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok. If you want to go see how putrid my Vikings take was, half of it was for the bit. If you want to go see how bad that video was, that's blowing up right now. Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok, YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. More daily fantasy football content coming your way. Join our Chalkboard league winning content over there. We'll get all your fantasy football questions answered down the link of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Week 11. By the time the viewers get this in the books. Recap Sunday's action. We got waiver ads, but let's dive into some news and notes from around the league brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper, the #1 fantasy football platform in the world. It's where I lost by 1.3. It's where I dominated Cameron this week. It's where it doesn't matter. Every player I touch in our other Dynasty League just turns to dust immediately. 3 people I tried to make trades with this week. All 3 of their players got injured.
2 of those players are on my other Dynasty team.
So I just have a crippling effect, unfortunately. Go play fantasy football on the #1 fantasy football platform in the world with over 4 million people. Sleeper by using the link down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Biggest piece of news today. The Denver Broncos. Well, maybe not the biggest. One of the biggest pieces of news. I shouldn't say the biggest.
Most surprising, maybe.
Most surprising. The Denver Broncos waived Melvin Gordon. His time in Denver is done. And here's what I have to say. Where was this when Javonte Williams was healthy? What?
Yeah.
Me as a Javonte Williams manager, a former truther before they signed Melvin Gordon. Where was this? What? I don't get this. I don't get it.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't get it either. And I think that's what we have to leave it at.
Yeah, it's just
after Chase Edmonds likely to miss a few weeks too.
Why have him for 11 weeks and then cut him? Like it just makes no sense.
Yeah, and no Chase Edmonds now. So you're down Mike Boone, you're down Chase Edmonds,
and now you cut.
Now you waive Melvin Gordon. So Latavius Murray stonks to the moon. Like
no kidding.
We'll talk about him later. I mean, he's a #1 waiver wire priority this week.
It has to be.
Unbelievable. Kyle Pitts. I can't make fun of him anymore because this is sad. He's placed on the IR with a torn MCL. This is just devastating because you get 1,000 yards his rookie season. Phenomenal. Year 2, gets stuck with Marcus Mariota and Arthur Smith, who runs the ball more than any other coach in the NFL as his head coach. Just incompetent offense. So now you've kind of let year 1 and 2 of his prime kind of fall to the wayside. Maybe not his prime, but
Yeah.
of his young athletic career, you kind of let that fall to the wayside. And this is just devastating. It's devastating. As much as I give the guy crap, like NFL wise, fantasy football aside, it's sad.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the top talents of the position. I mean, if you saw the hit, it was a gross hit. Everyone right away was like, our friends over at Fantasy Doctors, Jesse Moore, was like, "Oh man, like that's a easily like could be like J.K. Dobbins bad of a knee injury."
Right.
And then he goes off doing high knees on the sideline after he gets hit, and now he has a torn MCL. So you feel really bad for him. He wanted to be out there.
Yeah.
But like you said, he had Marcus Mariota throwing the ball. Him and Drake London have just been cursed by that all season. So, man, yeah, it's tough. It's hard to see.
Not to continue on sad stories as well, though, but Giants rookie wide receiver Wan'Dale Robinson, torn ACL, done for the year, on his way to his best day as a young pro. 13 targets in this game. He was a top 10 fantasy wide receiver. We'll touch on him a little bit later too, but this is just brutal. This is just so brutal.
Yeah, it's tough for these two guys too because it's late in the year now. We're getting to they get 9 months and they're back at the beginning, like week 1, like is in 10 months.
Week 1 will be when they're probably finished, like starting to finish up healing. So we're talking, they're still going to miss 2, 3, potentially even 4 weeks of next year.
And that's tough to miss a training, especially for like a Wan'Dale Robinson. You're going into your second year. I mean, that's tough.
Training camp is huge your second year. Yeah.
Yep.
Just devastating. Justin Fields suffered a left shoulder injury against Atlanta. Was carted off. Don't really have any further updates on that other than it is his left shoulder. That's something to be tracking during the week. Still had a phenomenal week.
Yep.
Excuse me, Joe Mixon and Matthew Stafford both left Sunday's games with concussions.
Yeah.
Well, this is the time of the year where you roster your handcuffs because Samaje Perine, 3 touchdowns yesterday. Unbelievable day for Samaje Perine, but that's why you roster your handcuffs, because if something like this happens to Mixon, Perine immediately becomes a flex option, if not a running back 2 option.
Yeah, for sure.
Stafford, on the other hand, this Rams team is just putrid, so not much you can really do there. Kadarius Toney got hamstrings of tissue paper.
Yeah, no kidding.
Just unbelievable. 0
You can't make it up.
My start of the week. You can't make it up, right? Supposed to get a ton of volume. It was the perfect game to get a ton of volume. Could not put it together. Forced out of the yesterday's game with hamstring injury. CEH, Mike Williams, both forced out of last night's game with ankle injuries.
Yeah.
Devastating for Mike Williams, who literally just came back from an ankle injury, and now all of a sudden we're looking at more missed time.
Yeah, I don't understand why Mike Will came back. Everything I was reading from different people was like this was like the very earliest he could have come back. I mean, with the injuries that the wide receivers are having for the Chargers, you would think they'd just sit him, give him one more week. We don't want to risk a re-injury with the fact that Keenan Allen's coming off an injury too.
Right.
So,
well, especially with Josh Palmer and the massive game he had last night.
Yeah,
you didn't need to do that.
No.
Then lastly, Lions designate rookie wide receiver Jamison Williams to return from the PUP, to which I ask why, but I suppose the Lions have won 3 straight. They probably think they're in the hunt, which I mean, they are technically.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which is kind of crazy. 2 weeks ago, we were writing them off. Now this week, they're back in the hunt. So
I'm sure they just want to see him out there, see what he can do. Yeah. You're not playing him for fantasy. I mean, I'd be surprised if he was over 50% of snaps within the next 4 weeks. So
I would be as well.
They're gonna throw him out there a couple snaps, see how he's feeling, and then move on from there.
Yep. News and notes from around the league brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper, the #1 fantasy football platform in the world. If you want to join over 4 million people over on Sleeper, you can check out the link down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. All right, Cameron, let's do it. Booms and busts of the week. Per usual. Let's start with the running back position. And all the Tony Polar truthers are having a heyday today. 15 attempts, 80 yards, 0 rushing touchdowns, but boy, 6 receptions on 6 targets for 109 yards, 2 touchdowns. 36.9 fantasy points on the week. Talk about efficiency. Efficiency is Tony Pollard's middle name.
Yeah. I mean, he looked really good. He looked super explosive. His counterpart Zeke had maybe a couple runs where he looked explosive, but every time Pollard touched the ball, I mean, it was like at least 6 yards. It felt like the Vikings just could not stop him.
Average 5.3 yards per attempt. You do the math on 6 for 109. I mean, we're talking darn near. If I could do math on that, that'd be great, but I don't think I can. Math is hard, kids.
18 yards a catch.
There it is. There it is. Thank you. Matt Cameron was a math minor. I clearly was not. We just talked about handcuffing your stud running backs because Samaje Perine, 11 attempts, 30 yards, no touchdowns on the ground. But hey, he caught 3 through the air, 4 receptions. 3 of them were touchdowns for 52 yards, 30.2 fantasy points.
Yeah, you want to talk about efficiency? 75% of your receptions are touchdowns. That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. I will take that any day of the week. But again, Samaje Perine, he has to be a waiver wire pickup this week. You got to prioritize him if you're a Joe Mixon manager.
For sure.
How much, if you're in a fab, how much fab are you spending on Samaje Perine?
Oh, I mean, you're probably spending. I mean, at this point, it's got to be pretty close to all he got left.
Just to get your handcuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you know too, like if you got the Joe Mixon manager and he's sitting at like 23 fab, I'm spending 24. You know, and I'm just saying no, you don't get him. You should have had him already. Now he's mine. You know,
right?
And that's kind of where I'd be with it.
Be petty. This is the time of year where you can be petty.
Exactly.
You can be petty. It's okay to be petty in your fantasy football leagues. If people really want to hold it over you, tell them to get over it. It's like if we take this thing too seriously, like it makes it not as fun anymore.
Yes.
Like you should play to win. That's not to mistake playing to win.
Yeah.
You should play to win, but to take it so seriously that you're going to get peeved at your league mates for making a strategic move.
Yeah. I mean, we just had that in our dynasty league.
We just had that happen in our dynasty league.
I'm playing the Kyler Murray manager and another guy,
he wasn't even playing him.
I don't even think he's in the playoff hunt, really.
No.
Going out and picking up Colt McCoy, making sure that he can't have him tonight. So
just to make sure Cameron, who's 8-2, has the best team by 1.5 miles in that league, secures a dub. I couldn't believe that. It was hilarious. Yes. That was so funny. At any rate, roster your handcuffs. You can be petty with your league mates.
Yeah.
Hey, Najee Harris, welcome to the list. Finally makes it in his top 3.
Yeah, and he did it with decent efficiency too, running 4.5 yards per carry.
4.5 yards per carry.
The touchdowns, I mean, that's the biggest part for Najee. That's what we haven't seen.
Yeah.
And to see him get 6 targets too, like that's another big thing. You know, if he can put another week or 2 like this together, you know, you can start maybe getting excited again about Najee. But you know, he's still nothing more than a mid to low end RB2 for me after this week.
No kidding. And he's got the schedule coming up for it too.
Yeah.
Look at the last few weeks, gets Cleveland. I believe he gets Atlanta in there as well. I mean, it is the matchup to have Najee Harris, or the schedule to have Najee Harris for down the stretch. Third most favorable schedule for running backs down the stretch. So frankly, if you can go out and still get him cheap, if a manager wants to quote unquote sell him high, I wouldn't mind investing right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially like, you know, we're going to talk about, you know, Jamal Williams. I mean, even like a David Montgomery. I wouldn't hate trading a David Montgomery for Najee Harris.
That'll depend on Justin Fields' health.
That's true. That's what I was going to say. That was the caveat. If Justin Fields is out, then obviously, I mean, David with Khalil Herbert out as well.
Yeah.
But if Justin Fields is in, I mean, he's the RB1 in that offense. And unlike the Ravens, where their running backs are super efficient when Lamar's playing really well, that is not the case in Chicago.
Did you trade DeAndre Swift plus for Najee Harris?
Oof. Honestly, it depends on the manager, but I'm pretty sure you could get Najee Harris plus for Swift. So, you know, you might
be able to for the right manager. I don't think it would be me. But
no, but you know, he still had DeAndre Swift still has that name value. But yeah, if I'm looking straight up right now, and I'm looking for an RB2, I'm probably trading for Najee because Swift is scary right now. It's not like Swift isn't talent.
That's it.
And for multiple weeks in a row, and he doesn't get any goal line work. That is all Jamal Williams until, you know, it's the Jamal Williams' 4th time in the red zone. Then they give it to DeAndre Swift. But it's like,
It's scary.
Najee Harris is in a tough spot. You might want to. Now would be the time to buy before, like you said, the schedule comes up. And obviously, some people's trade deadlines have passed, but
at any rate, we still our trade deadlines in most of my leagues are this week before week 12. Derrick Henry, 28 attempts, 87 yards and a touchdown, 25.4 fantasy points, added 2 receptions for 45 yards. He's really good at football.
Yeah.
And he played a Green Bay Packers team that was actually allowing quite a few yards per rush. Well, actually not yards per rush. They were allowing the second most rushing yards, I believe. Henry only averaged 3.1 yards per carry, though. Like, this is just like disgusting volume by definition.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Derrick Henry. That's why you love him, is he gets disgusting volume. Like, he can have a game like this, and he still puts up 25 points because he gets 30 carries. And then when you get one of the games where he puts up 30 carries and averages 5 yards per attempt, then that's your week winning. Yep.
So when he plays the Houston Texans,
yes,
Jamal Williams, 17 attempts, 64 yards, 3.8 yards per carry, 3 scores on the ground. Good for 24.4 fantasy points. I mean,
what do you do with Jamal Williams?
Yeah.
RB 13 on the season, 12 total touchdowns, 5 top 15 finishes, 3 top 5 finishes. What do you do with this guy?
I'm going out and I'm buying. I'm going to go out and buy Jamal Williams.
All right.
Because the Jamal Williams manager isn't going to value him the same way they would a Najee Harris, the same way they would. Who's another name that's kind of fallen, like even a DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
Like, Jamal Williams, people are waiting for the floor to fall out, but the floor might not fall out. That's the thing. I'd be a buyer on Jamal. Frankly, like, I would pay up for Jamal, because he's still going to be cheaper than these stud options. Yeah. We talk about trading for Najee Harris. Like, Jamal Williams is in that same boat. The schedule isn't bad.
Here are some players who's averaged more points than Kenneth Walker, obviously, because Walker didn't start till later in the season.
Right.
Jonathan Taylor, he's averaging more points than Travis Etienne. Damian Pierce, Cordero Patterson. This is points per game, so even if these guys miss.
Yes. Yep.
Miles Sanders, Antonio Gibson, Najee Harris, James Conner, Ezekiel Elliott, David Montgomery. I mean, he's averaging 15.4 points per game. He's averaging 0.3 less points than Dalvin Cook and Aaron Jones per game,
which is crazy. That's why I'm a buyer on Jamal, because you could trade any of those guys you just listed and probably get Jamal Williams straight up.
And the volume's not going away. Like, he's been really good for them, so they're not actually going to take the ball out of his hands.
Right. And let me rephrase. So when I say you could trade any of those guys for Jamal and get him, that I'm not saying I would trade all those guys. I'm not trading Damian Pierce to go get him. Yeah. I'm not trading Jonathan Taylor to go get him. But, like, that's almost the point. Like, you could trade someone who's averaging far less fantasy points than the Jonathan Taylors and those other guys that you listed. Miles Sanders.
100% would sell Miles Sanders for Jamal Williams right now.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
It's just, they're pretty much, they feel like the same back. They've gotten pretty much the same amount of carries in the same amount of games. Sanders is more efficient, but if I'm banking on one of them to score a touchdown, I'm going to bank on the guy that doesn't have Jalen Hurts rushing the ball in too.
That's fair. Is that just a ploy for Tyler to trade you Miles Sanders in our Dynasty League?
No, I don't want Miles Sanders. I already had him in my Dynasty. I can't do it 2 years in a row.
That's fair. That's fair. David Montgomery. Let's move on. David Montgomery, running back 6 on the week, 17 attempts, 67 yards, and a touchdown. Added 3 receptions for 54 yards as well. When you play the Falcons, they allow a ton of fantasy points to running backs.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I have to say.
His efficiency has been terrible all year long. It's just if he gets the receiving work and a touchdown. In this game, he did. So then he was, pretty good.
David Montgomery will never have good efficiency. Never. Never in his NFL career will he have good efficiency.
No.
Josh Jacobs, 24 attempts, 109 yards, no touchdowns, but had 3 receptions for 51 yards. Solid day on the ground for Josh Jacobs. This is about where nice little bounce back game. He hasn't been as good recently. Yeah. Good to see him back in the top 10 after the insane tear he was on 3 weeks ago.
For sure, and it's impressive against the Broncos defense, who's been playing really well.
They've been playing really well, but I said this on the preview episode, is that the way you beat the Denver Broncos is you can just run the football on the Broncos.
Yeah.
Their D-line isn't as good as their secondary. Their secondary is where you get into trouble. Granted, we'll talk about the number one wide receiver on the week who didn't have any trouble, but
but he's
still, this was impressive for the Raiders. It
Yes.
was impressive for the Raiders.
Yep.
Austin Eckler, no surprise, he's top 10, 19 carries, 83 yards. Good to see that efficiency up at 4.5 and a touchdown. Only 2 receptions for 17 yards, which is kind of crazy considering they're playing Kansas City.
I know, and that's the crazy thing about Eckler is, I mean, you get one game where he's got 10 receptions and 27 yards rushing, the other game he's got 83 yards and a rushing touchdown. But he just does it all, so it always pans out to work out well.
It always pans out. Stud on your roster.
Yep.
Welcome back, Ezekiel Elliott. Efficiency, absolute crap.
Yeah.
15 carries, 42 yards, 2.8 yards per tote, but don't matter because he stumbled into the end zone twice, which is exactly why Ezekiel Elliott still has value, because Tony Pollard is the king of efficiency. Nobody is going to argue that. Nobody is going to argue that Ezekiel Elliott is more efficient than Tony Pollard. But Ezekiel Elliott, more likely to fall into the end zone.
Yeah, he's the Jamal Williams of the Dallas Cowboys.
He is. He's the Jamal Williams of the Dallas Cowboys. It just happens they know how to involve a player of Tony Pollard's caliber better than the Lions do with DeAndre Swift.
Yes.
Devin Singletary wraps out the top 10, 18 carries, 86 yards, and a touchdown, 17.7 fantasy points. When you play the Browns, you should be top 10.
Yeah, sneaky back-to-back top 12 finishes for Devin Singletary, averaging 17 touches a week. So something to keep an eye on. I'm not saying I'm in on him, but
no. But James Cook too, 11 totes this past week, 86 yards, great efficiency. He's still going to be buried down there though. That's the only reason why I don't like Devin Singletary a ton, because there's going to be other backs there, and I'm waiting for them to get Nyheim Hines.
Oh yes,
Nyheim Hines. I'm waiting for them to get him involved. They trade a third-round pick for him. No, that was Kadarius Toney.
Yeah,
but they traded a draft pick for Nyheim Hines. You got to get that man on the field eventually.
Yeah, you would think.
Wide receiver booms of the week. We just talked about this guy. Davante Adams. 7 receptions, 13 targets, 141 yards, 2 touchdowns, 33.1 fantasy points. Again, a ton of this production right away in the first half.
Yep.
Right away. 20 of these came in the first quarter, I'm pretty sure again.
Yeah.
And he just goes silent the rest of the game.
Yeah, to overtime, and then he had Patrick Surtain looking lost on that game winner.
Yep. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. That was not good. That was not good. But Davante Adams, he has been on an absolute tear recently.
Yeah, he has 30 more fantasy points than the next closest wide receiver, that is Justin Jefferson, over the last 3 weeks. Averaging 33 points a game over the last 3 weeks.
It's absolutely insane. Breakneck pace that Davante Adams is on. If you somehow got him on his dip when he had only 5.4 fantasy points, if you somehow snagged him low, you were handsomely rewarded.
No kidding.
Amari Cooper making me look like an idiot. I had said he was a potential sick candidate this week.
Yeah.
So apparently, I don't get this. So it's neutral site, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Amari Cooper is still incredible. But in any opposing team stadium, it has to be in their stadium, he's just trash. I don't get it. 8 receptions, 12 targets, 113 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I will say, again, a lot of this came early and often in this game. First drive, he had 12 fantasy points. Next drive, he caught another touchdown, up to 21 fantasy points. But then the rest of the day, fairly silent. Still good for 31 fantasy points on the day. But man, oh man, he made me look stupid this week.
Yeah. Yeah, he played really well. And, if you have Amari Cooper, I feel like you got to be feeling excited that Deshaun Watson's coming back in 2 weeks.
Yes.
I know Watson struggled in the preseason, but, Deshaun Watson's still going to be an upgrade over Jacoby Brissett.
Most definitely. He most definitely will. Josh Palmer. Brought up his name. 8 receptions, 10 targets, 106 yards, 2 touchdowns, 30.6 fantasy points. Nice little day in his return, or not in his return, but when Mike Williams went out, Josh Palmer stepped in and continued to dominate.
Yeah, he did. And he's a tough player, even if Mike Williams misses time, because he feels so hit or miss. And so even when both players are out, he had one boom week, and then the next week he was, just absent from the game.
Yeah.
So now he's a boom week. And so you're like, do I really feel like I have the confidence to play him next week? That's going to be one that we're going to have to really look into as the week goes on.
Yeah, I would be more okay with playing Josh Palmer moving forward, but again, it's dependent on if both Mike and Keenan are out there. I'm just less enticed when they're both out there.
Yeah, 100%.
T. Higgins, nice little day. 9 receptions, 13 targets, 148 yards, 23 fantasy points. This is what you should expect in a game against the Steelers, who have a poor secondary and a Bengals offense that is becoming pass happy.
Yeah.
And no Joe Mixon.
Yeah, no Joe Mixon. But we kind of needed to see this too. T. Higgins hadn't been great since Jamar Chase was out. Joe Burrow hadn't been great since Jamar Chase was out. I mean, they routed the Panthers last week, but that was the Joe Mixon show, right? He had 5 touchdowns. So this was really good to see from T. Higgins. Gives you a lot of confidence moving forward. Jamar Chase will be back soon, which I only think actually helps T. Higgins, right? I mean,
opens targets, opens routes. Yeah,
exactly.
Efficiency goes back up.
Exactly.
I mean, not that efficiency is really down in this game, but again, deep targets become more available to T. Higgins.
Yes.
Demarcus Robinson. He's the wide receiver 1 in Baltimore. Would you have guessed that?
No.
9 targets, 9 receptions, 128 yards, 21.8 fantasy points. He's also a waiver wire ad this week. I'm interested in him. I want to add him.
Yeah, you got to be. He's been playing really good. I'm pulling up his last couple of games here. Last couple of games haven't been like great fantasy wise, but his last 3 games, 8 targets, 4 targets, and now 9 targets. So I mean, he's getting involved. He's the ball's coming to him. It's good to see. So
I mean, yeah, we thought it'd be Duvernay. I think once Andrews is back and healthy, he'll continue to be the guy. But
yes,
I mean, I'm interested in Demarcus Robinson. I am.
Yeah.
It seems like he's going to be the one here now.
Yeah.
Chris Olave, welcome back. 5 of 6, 102 and a touchdown, 21.2 fantasy points against the Rams. Andy Dalton figured it out. Had believe a 50-yard touchdown from Olave, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, it just ran right past Jalen Ramsey.
Gone. Chris Olave. I mean, and since he's the only guy with no Michael Thomas, this is what you should be expecting from him. He's going to be a top asset rest of the season.
Yeah, they just got to give him the ball. That's the problem. I mean, in fact, he only had 6 targets is still crazy to me. I mean, he's a really skilled player. He should be getting more targets. Even if he's covered, they should be throwing the ball.
Right. I should be giving him at least 8 targets, I would think, every game as a wide receiver 1 here. Christian Watson did it again. 4 of 6, 48, 2 touchdowns, 21.1 fantasy points. What are you doing with Christian Watson? He was a waiver wire ad, but what are you doing with him? Are you like 4 receptions, 48 yards, 2 touchdowns? One of those touchdowns, 12 men on the field. Rodgers found him in the corner, went up and got one. It was really that's not to take anything away from Watson. Beautiful play from Watson. But he found the end zone twice on 48 yards. I hate using the term touchdown dependent with wide receivers, but 5 over the last 2 weeks, I want to think some of that starts to tilt back towards Allen Lazard, who out-targeted him.
Yeah, that's the thing is, I mean, Allen Lazard didn't even play well. Allen Lazard had 2 big drops in that game, and was still the guy who was getting the targets. Christian Watson, I really feel that he's a lot like Chase Claypool, his rookie season, where you're going to have some really great games, but if you're picking and choosing when to start him, it feels like you're always going to pick wrong. Feels like you're always going to you're going to put him in, he's going to get you 4 points, he's going to have 2 catches for 20 yards, and you bench him, he's going to do something like this, where he puts up 4 for 48 and 2 touchdowns. So, it's just, you can't even say he's matchup dependent, because it's just, are they in the red zone or not?
It's tough to win with Watson.
Yes.
He was one where in our dynasty league, I'll get your full thoughts. I'm going to get your full thoughts because I also kind of want the people to hear this, what I did with Christian Watson. I traded Christian Watson and Rondale Moore in a 2024 second for Deontay Johnson in a 2024 first round pick that is likely going to be a top 3 pick.
Yeah. And so I really like it because we're looking at skill wise, right? If Deontay Johnson's 25, 26 years old, so he's not much older
26.
than either 26. So he's, a couple years older than those wide receivers, but you're still looking at 5 good seasons out of him at least, right? Kenny Pickett's going to have another year under his belt. He's still getting a crazy amount of targets. It just hasn't been hitting like we had seen. This team, you got to think, is going to take a step forward next year, score more touchdowns. That's going to benefit Deontay Johnson. if I'm looking at Rondale Moore and Christian Watson, Rondale Moore is about to become the third best wide receiver in his offense.
Yeah.
And Christian Watson feels so hit or miss, and you get the first instead of the second. I would be feeling really good about this moving forward.
So, yeah, it's one of those where, like, I was tired of waiting on Christian Watson when I saw
Yes.
he had a good game. Like, I'll just go sell him because I don't want to deal with
Yep.
him. And I also have another guy who's in the top 10. But Christian Watson, he's one of those where, like, in redraft, though,
Yeah.
I'd look to go package him right now. I really would.
Yes.
I'd go look to package him.
Yep. And like you said, you got Treylon Burks on your team as well. So you've already got a rookie this year that you're sitting on.
Right.
You know, and I mean Treylon Burks is definitely a lot safer than Christian Watson, but they're both, you know, kind of that a little bit of a wild card player.
Right.
And so do you really want two of them when you can go sell and get a guy like Deontay Johnson? And it puts you, I mean, probably top 2 or 3 best wide receiving core in our dynasty league now too. So
the top. I'm just the top. Wan'Dale Robinson, we talked about him. Devastating. He had to leave this game. 9 of 13 for 100 yards, added a rushing attempt for 4 yards, 19.4 fantasy points. George Pickens, 4 of 6, 83 and a touchdown. He's Kenny Pickett's favorite target. He's got the most chemistry with him. George Pickens should be in your starting lineups going forward. And then Treylon Burks.
It's all rookies at the end there.
All rookies at the end.
5 rookies.
111, 18.1 fantasy points. Yeah, look at that. 5 rookies to wrap out the top 10. Olave, Watson, Robinson, Pickens, Burks.
Yeah.
This is a talented group, man. They're going to be something special.
Yeah, and Burks too did with a little bit of flair at the end, hitting Jair with a "you're too small." Oh, man.
You're too small. That was phenomenal. That was fun. Take some dog there.
No kidding. I guess a guy like Jair too. I mean, he's a top corner in the league. So good for Treylon.
Good for Treylon. You love to see it. Yep. Quarterback booms. We'll fly through these and give some extra time for the bus this week. All Joe Burrow, 24-39, 355, 4 touchdowns, 3 to Samaje Perine, let me add.
Yeah.
2 picks in there, doesn't matter. 28.7 fantasy points.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good bounce back week. You expect it against the Steelers, though.
Can we say we were wrong on Joe Burrow? Because we were advocates of barely top 10, like quarterback 10, quarterback 9, quarterback 10. I mean, he is a top 5 fantasy quarterback right now.
He is, and I mean, you were not hoping, but you were expecting regression, and I mean, the dude is just it's just an efficient offense with the playmakers they have outside, right? I mean, I feel like it's similar situation to Tua with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. There's only so much a defense can do against 2 wide receivers like that.
And you have Tom Brady, who's been severely underperforming, Russell Wilson, who's been severely underperforming, Justin Herbert, who's been severely underperforming. Like, there's 3 players right there where all of a sudden we're looking at Burrow as, you know, quarterback 7, quarterback 8 on the season versus top 5. And that's nothing against Burrow. I'm just comparing.
No, 100%.
Who we had in our preseason rankings. Joe Burrow's playing out of his mind right now. That is no disrespect to Burrow at all whatsoever. He's been phenomenal. Don't know who else has been phenomenal. As always, Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Quarterback 2 on the week, 20 of 34, 329 and 3. How many of those did Kelsey catch? 2?
3 of them. He got all 3.
But he did catch all 3. That's what I thought. I thought I got 3 Kelsey notifications last night. That saved me my fantasy week in one of my leagues. 27.5 fantasy points for Mahomes.
And he has officially taken the QB1 spot on the season from Josh Allen. He's averaging
suck on that, Josh Allen. He sucks.
26.9 fantasy points a game.
That's unbelievable.
It's crazy right now.
So that 3rd round draft capital you paid on Mahomes might actually be paying off right now.
Yeah, it's looking pretty. I mean, he's got 300 more passing yards than the next closest player. He's got 6 more passing touchdowns than the next closest player. I mean, the dude's on fire right now.
Daniel Jones cracks the top 10, cracks the top 3. They let that man throw the ball 44 times on Sunday.
Yeah, they're getting hammered by the Lions. I was not expecting this game.
No, the Lions just Dan Campbell. Whatever Dan Campbell had those boys eat. He had them fired up real good. 27 of 44 for Daniel Jones. 340 yards. I believe he hadn't gone over like 250 on the season.
Yeah, he hadn't. I mean, he's a top 10 QB on the season, but it's been really reliant on that rushing, and it's been reliant too on the fact that he's not turning the ball over. But obviously, in this game, it's his Only his second game with more than 35 attempts and his first game with over 40 attempts on the season. So, that's kind of why we see, the yardage explosion this week. They were down early and they were down quickly to the Lions. So
Most
gross
definitely.
game.
If I had a breaking news button right now, I would hit it. Jets head coach Robert Saleh said he's evaluating everything and they are not committing to Zach Wilson as next week's starter versus the Bears.
Wow. That's big because
Zach Wilson. Get him out. Get him out.
Said too that Zach's our guy yesterday. He said that in the post-game interview. So
and then Zach Wilson was asked if the offense let the defense down. He said, no, not at all. What?
Yeah, you got
negative 21 yards of total offense in the second half.
Yeah, that's brutal.
That's your fault. 9 for 72. That's a rushing back stat. That's rushing back stat line.
Here's your question: Zach Wilson or Baker Mayfield?
Oh Lord, don't make me choose.
Yeah,
Baker Mayfield. But both might be out of a job in the next 2 weeks.
That's where they're both at right now. I mean, that is just so bad.
Oh. I'm here for it because I've seen a lot of Derek Carr to the Jets next year, a lot of Jimmy G to the Jets next year. I'm sneaky in love with these. Like, who's the next quarterback for the Jets? Because they're all going to be mid still.
Did you see the rumor
with Derek Carr and Aaron Rodgers?
Yes. What the heck? That would be. There's no way that happens.
There's no way it happens. I mean, they both got massive contracts. But no, Derek Carr, he's expired after this year. Oh, no, he's still under contract, but the Raiders could cut him. Yep. Crazy. Anyway, we got really far off of Daniel Jones.
Yep, we did. Way to go, Danny.
Breaking news with Zach Wilson. I mean, he was just awful this week, though. Yes. He was so bad.
Brutal.
Jacoby Brissett, he was quarterback 4 on the week. 28 of 41, 324, and 3. When you're playing down to the Bills most of the game, that's how it works. 25.9 fantasy points. I mean, can we just say Jacoby Brissett has actually been playing pretty freaking well?
Yeah.
In Deshaun Watson's absence?
Yeah, he has. I mean, they were the fact that they've been putting up the amount of points they have has been pretty ridiculous. And then he can put up 324 and 3 with no interceptions. That's pretty impressive for a guy that you're like, oh yeah, I guess we're stuck with Jacoby Brissett.
Yeah, they went out and got him, and he's actually been paying more than dividends for them.
Yep.
Jalen Hurts finds his way into the top 5 again. Top 5, top 5. 18 of 25, 190 and 1. 16 rushing attempts on the ground, 86 yards and a touchdown. About time we see Jalen Hurts get involved in the rushing attack again after a few pitiful weeks of rushing attempts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to jump down to the bottom or the next guy too, Justin Fields. Just because they had such similar,
it was nearly identical.
Fields 14 of 21, 153, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 18 attempts, 85 yards and a touchdown. They're going to play the same way when it comes to fantasy, right? You're going to both guys 190 yards or less than a touchdown. You're thinking gross, but then you add 86 and a rushing touchdown. I mean, there's 14 extra points that you have. It's insane the floor that these two have.
And this is why it's still rest of season. This is why we say Jalen Hurts over Justin Fields still. I just trust Jalen Hurts as a passer more than I do Justin Fields. And once Jalen Hurts gets this rushing back, game over, right? Then we're looking top 3, top 5 every week.
Definitely.
Andy Dalton, quarterback 7. 21 of 25, 260 and 3. Really nice week for Andy Dalton. Cleaned it up a little bit this week, but surprised he was still kept the job. Jameis not too happy he lost the job, but Andy Dalton
spoke out about it.
Yeah, about time. We'll see if Jameis gets back in, but after this week from Andy Dalton, I highly doubt it. When you only miss on 4 of your passes on the week, it's a pretty good week for an NFL quarterback.
Yep.
Justin Herbert, my start of the week, quarterback 8, 23 of 30, 280 and 2. 17 yards. Good to see him bounce back against the Chiefs. We said it'd be a high-scoring game. And indeed, I believe I said it would go over 50 points, and it did indeed go over 50 points. Dak Prescott, masterclass against the Minnesota Vikings, 22 of 25, 276 and 2. 20.6 fantasy points. This is no surprise. No surprise at all. Derek Carr wraps out the top 10, 23 of 37, 307 and 2 for 20.3 fantasy points. Tight end booms of the week. Travis Kelce. Next. Austin Kelce, 6 of 10, 115, 3 touchdowns, 35.5 fantasy points. Nearly doubled the tight end 2 on the week.
He is just so much.
He's one of one.
It's not even like there's no conversation for who the top tight end is in the NFL.
I saw interesting tweet out on Twitter. Why isn't Travis Kelce the 101 every year?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, like why not? He's the most valuable player at the most valuable position at the most scarce position. It's more scarce than running backs.
Yeah. The only 2 players right now with more fantasy points on the season other than quarterbacks are Austin Eckler and Stephon Diggs. Eckler's got 230, Diggs is 227, and Kelce's at 223.
Like, if the argument for running backs in the first round is scarcity and value and studs, like, well, that's Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
Like, I think we're gonna have a real conversation next offseason that Travis Kelce should be a top 5 pick. I think we're gonna have that conversation.
You have to at this point, because this year where we were coming in, oh no, what about age and stuff? But the dude doesn't slow down. I mean, he's just physically more dominant, and he's attached to the best quarterback in the NFL. So,
and Andy Reid continues to just draw up these like seeming like just there's nothing exciting about a Travis Kelce play.
No,
it's a seam route, it's a crossing route. It's like there's nothing special to Travis Kelce's game. It's just the best quarterback in the NFL, and he's so big and tough that nobody can guard him.
Yeah.
Austin Hooper was at tight end 2 on the week. Sorry, you could add something else there?
No, it's just amazed at how much better he is than everyone else at the position.
It's not funny. It really isn't. Austin Hooper was a tight end 2 on the week, 4 of 4 for 36 and 2. Way to go, Austin Hooper. 2 touchdowns on the week. Not a streaming option going forward still.
No.
Too inconsistent. Pat Freiermuth, hello. 12 targets, 8 receptions, 79 yards, 15.9 fantasy points. That target share keeps on rising.
Yeah. Yep. He's now 6th in targets among tight ends. So, I mean, he's got to be a top 10 option every single week, probably top 7 option every single week.
If you're without a Goddard, if you're without an Ertz, I would go try and make a trade for Pat.
Yeah, I would agree.
If he's a tight end 2 on somebody's team, I would go make a trade for him.
Yeah, because he's not flashy, but he's the best you're going to get at the tight end position right now.
And his target share, I can't say it's going to continue to increase from 12 targets, but it's going to keep rising.
Yes.
Dawson Knox, welcome back. 7 of 7 for 70 yards. No touchdowns, though. Look at that. A volume day for Dawson Knox. I still don't want to stream him going forward.
Yes, since this is a 5th of his targets on the season.
Right, yeah. When you get a 5th of your targets in one game, I'll pass. Juwan Johnson. Tyler. I was kind of skeptical on Tyler saying Juwan Johnson should be an ad. I was kind of skeptical because some of those touchdowns were a little bit fluky. Caught another one this week, though. 3 receptions, 47 yards and a touchdown, 13.7 fantasy points.
Yeah, since week what week is this? Week 7, tight end 2. Then he was tight end 36. Don't like that. Then tight end 5, 4, and 3. So 4 top 5 tight end finishes in the last 5 weeks.
And he's got to be one of your best streaming options right now.
Yeah,
has to be.
Yeah.
Mark Andrews, 6 of 8, 63 yards, no touchdowns, 12.3 fantasy points. Good to see the volume. Good to see the targets there. He'll find the end zone here in the coming weeks and cement himself back into that top 2 conversation. Mm-hmm. It's Kelce 1 of 1, but then if you get into that next year, it's Mark Andrews 1 of 1, and then everybody else. Logan Thomas, Jonnu Smith, Tyler Higbee, TJ Hawkinson wrap out the top 10. I don't even want to discuss these guys because Tyler Higbee, you should be starting with no Matt Stafford now. Yeah. TJ Hawkinson, here's what I'll say about Hawk. 3 straight weeks of 9+ targets.
Yeah.
You have to look at that. The efficiency is not there, but I will take any tight end that gets me 6, 7, 8 targets every week.
Yeah. You got to think touchdowns are going to come. I mean, he's playing New England, who's been bad against the tight end this season.
Yes.
So you gotta love this matchup coming up. And, he's going to find the end zone at some point. Tight ends do, especially when they get this much volume.
Yeah, absolutely. Week 10 bus. Dun, dun,
Ooh.
dun. That's what our sound effect has got to be for the bus. Dun, dun,
dun,
dun.
dun, dun.
Saquon Barkley. What? 5.5 fantasy points against the Detroit Lions.
I know. Oh,
I paid up for him in so many DraftKings lineups this week.
just ridiculous.
I couldn't believe it. Running back 37 on the week, 15 attempts for 22 yards.
That's just crazy.
That man averaged less than 1.5 yards per carry. Oh, he averaged 1.5 yards per carry.
Just nuts.
Caught 2 receptions on 5 targets for 13 yards, but I don't really care. Disgusting.
Yeah.
Even just 10 more yards, Saquon.
Yeah.
13 more yards, I would have won my week.
Yeah, it's just like I had texted about, I think it was Dameon Pierce, just like talking about efficiency.
We'll get to him.
And you responded, and you're just like, it was just a bad week for efficiency all around. Like all these running backs struggled a lot of them struggled this week.
Let me go back up to the booms. How many of the booms even had? Here we go. So Samaje Perine, 2.7. Derrick Henry, 3.1. Jamal Williams, 3.8. David Montgomery, 3.9. Ezekiel Elliott, 2.8. You get a few who had efficient weeks, but like even those guys in the top 10, just not efficient weeks all around.
No.
Dalvin Cook, he was at least efficient, but only had 7.2 fantasy points because he only had 11 rushing attempts for 72 yards in a game they just got absolutely gobsmacked in. My goodness.
Yeah, it's tough.
I have nothing. I'm still speechless over that game. It was just so Minnesota Vikings. I just laugh. I can't laugh at it because it was that bad, but also like, my goodness.
It felt like the Eagles
divisional championship game.
Yeah, or division after the Minneapolis. Just they got on this high, and then it was like, no, we're gonna just die.
Yeah, and now you know the rest of the season. They're probably gonna finish the season at like 10-7.
Yeah,
which is what's going to be the sad thing. Dameon Pierce. Let's go back to inefficiency. 10 attempts, 8 yards. Man could be an average yard per carry.
Oh man. 2
receptions, 3 targets, 9 yards, 17 total yards on the day for Dameon Pierce. Yikes.
That is so gross.
3.7 fantasy points. Deonta Foreman, 11 attempts, 24 yards. Yikes. And this game was like decently close where they could keep beating Deonta Foreman if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't.
Nothing.
Running back 48 on the week. Honorable mentions. Okay, is this true? Michael Carter and James Robinson combined for 3.7 fantasy points on the week.
Yep.
15 attempts for 29. Oh, gosh. 15 attempts for 29 yards combined. 1 reception between the two of them for -2 yards.
When you have Zach Wilson, why Patriots just stacked the box the whole game? What were they worried about? Oh no, he's gonna throw it 3 yards down the field to Garrett Wilson for an incompletion. Like, no, you're not. You're gonna put 8-9 guys in the box every single play. It's just ridiculous.
I made James Robinson a sit on the week. I made a video for 4 for 4 fantasy football. I said, James Robinson, you better sit him this week. Yeah, this is exactly what I was expecting.
Yep.
Miles Sanders, 5.8 fantasy points and running back 34. He has not been good as of late. No. This Eagles team is starting to show their true colors a little bit. They're starting to struggle a little bit.
Yeah,
they're riding that 8-0 high.
And I think, earlier in the year they were having so much rushing touchdowns, and I just don't think they can keep that up. And when they're in the red zone, their RB1 is Jalen Hurts.
Yes.
And so that really hurts Miles Sanders because that's where his production was coming from.
Absolutely. When Miles Sanders gets in the end zone, it's a good fantasy week. When it's not, he's not getting enough receiving work to maintain production there. Wide receiver bus. Mike Williams, 2.5. Threw him in my starting lineup when I heard he returned, and he left the game with an ankle injury. He had a reception for 15 yards.
Gotta love it.
Garrett Wilson. Doesn't help when Zach Wilson can't hit the broadside of a barn. Well, he can hit the broadside of a defense, but not the broadside of a barn. Should have had multiple turnovers in that game. 3.2 fantasy points for Wilson, wide receiver 71 on the week, 12 yards. DJ Moore. Just as I predicted. I can't trust that man with Baker Mayfield. I can't.
No. Nope.
5.4 fantasy points, 3 for 24. You can't trust DJ Moore going forward as long as Baker Mayfield is starting, correct?
Can you even trust him with PJ Walker in there? He's had
I
two
can't.
good. Okay,
I can't because I've seen it with PJ Walker. I haven't. I've seen continuous mediocrity and continuous lack of unlocking from Baker Mayfield.
So do you trust him next week with Sam Darnold? Because I
Lord,
guarantee
no.
they're just going to
Lord,
roll
no.
it.
No.
Oh, it's just a mess in Carolina.
Justin Jefferson. Locked down by Trayvon Diggs? Question mark.
I mean, Diggs played well, but it's just
how much credit are we going to give to Diggs for this? When Kirk Cousins literally had a second and a half. By the time Kirk could throw the football, the defense was already around his ankles.
Yeah, I'm not going to give him like full credit for locking down Jefferson.
No.
I'm not going to say he played a bad game though. Like he almost had that
No.
crazy interception too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean there was like 3 drives in a row where Kirk had like 1.4 seconds because Mike Parsons was on top of him. So I mean it was just such a team domination that like Jefferson had no shot.
Right. Which again, I'm not trying to discredit Diggs when I say that, but
Yeah,
you give Kirk any kind of daylight to throw the football, like Trayvon Diggs zone corner, he's fine in man, but
yep.
You get him in zone, like that's Justin Jefferson's home run spot, baby. You get Justin Jefferson in his own defense, he's open every time.
Yes, he is.
Honorable mentions: Deontay Johnson. Justin Jefferson went 3 for 33. By the way, didn't even bring that stat line up.
Yeah.
Deontay Johnson. Yeah, he was pretty bad. 6.2 fantasy points, wide receiver 51. AJ Brown, another down week. 9 receptions, or not 9 receptions, 9 fantasy points. My goodness, wide receiver 41 on the week. If he had 9 receptions, he'd be in the booms right now.
Yes.
CeeDee Lamb, 9.5. Terry McLaurin, 9.6 to wide receiver 38 and 39 on the week.
Yeah, if you had CeeDee Lamb, you're so disappointed. You had that just route of a game, and they just didn't. I mean, they didn't have to use him, but they just, you're just upset. Like
he was one. I had him in plenty of DraftKings lineups too.
Yeah,
I had him in plenty because I figured it'd be him for another 20+ point day. Yeah. How bad the secondary is, but when Minnesota can't keep pace, it doesn't matter.
No.
Quarterback bus. We don't find this man here very often.
No.
Josh Allen. The sky is falling. Josh Allen's in the bus of the week.
Yeah. They didn't need him, though. We talked about that earlier.
No, 12.6 fantasy points, quarterback 17, 18 to 27, 197 and a touchdown. Like, they just didn't need him. Josh Allen will be fine. He's still the quarterback 1.
Yeah.
Well, him or Mahomes going forward?
I'm going to go Mahomes, actually. I'm feeling like I'm going to ride the hot hand. And Josh Allen has been in a slight slump these last couple of games. So I'm going to take the hot hand in Mahomes. That's not saying I think Josh Allen's going to be bad. I just think Mahomes is so unbelievably hot right now that I'm not going to bet against him.
Well, and you just added the elbow stuff with Josh Allen, too. I think I'd just rather take the fully healthy, dynamic offense.
Yep.
Both are dynamic, but yeah, I think I'll ride with Mahomes rest of the season. Yep. Lamar Jackson. Quarterback 14 on the week, but still 16.5 fantasy points. Really not what you want out of your 4th, 5th round quarterback. 24-33 for 209. No touchdowns. Added an interception in there.
Yeah. Scored on the ground.
You did score on the ground. Yes, I forgot to add that in there. But still,
he's efficient on the ground.
He was efficient on the ground. Honorable mentions: Kirk Cousins. When you got a second and a half to throw the football, you're going to score 2.2 fantasy points. Quarterback 27 on the week. Russell Wilson, not an uncommon name, 10.7. Quarterback 19 on the week. He was 24-31 for 247, but he's not scoring touchdowns.
This is a team that just got picked apart by the Indianapolis Colts, and you can't even throw a touchdown against them. Our buddy Jackson just said this. Someone else on TikTok is doing an update on Russell Wilson every week. Has Russell Wilson thrown more touchdowns than he has bathrooms in his house? And the answer is still no through week 11.
Which is hilarious. I saw that. That's hilarious.
Yeah, that is a good one.
Tight end bus. Dalton Schultz. 5.2 fantasy points. A tight end 18. Again, in a game that, Minnesota hasn't been atrocious against tight ends. But still, you expected him to more than 3 for 22.
Yeah, and that was all in the first half too. So
yes,
they just shut everyone down in the second half because they just did not need anybody.
Cole Kmet, 6.5, tight end 16. He's just had 2 big back-to-back weeks against the Falcons too, who had allowed a buttload of fantasy points to the tight end position.
Yeah.
You expect maybe a little bit more, but you were also kind of rewarded the past couple weeks with a handful of touchdowns.
For sure.
Honorable mentions: Robert Tonyan, David Njoku. For the most part, tight ends are pretty chalk this week.
Yeah.
We'll see how Kittle does tonight, but I'm expecting a big game out of Kittle against the Cardinals.
You would hope so.
Booms and busts of the week. That wraps out our week 11 recap. Cameron, let's wrap out the episode the only way we know how to all of a sudden. Rapid fire waiver wire. Your waivers, they do run tonight. Got to make sure you're prioritizing the right players. So really, let's rapid fire our top ads, and it's really only 3 guys this week. Waivers are pretty thin this week. I wouldn't go out and be super aggressive, but there's a handful of guys we brought up throughout the episode that we would go out and add, and I'll let you start us off.
Yeah, I mean, Latavius Murray's got to be the obvious one. They just let go of Melvin Gordon. They got no other running backs. This is a team, they need to do something now or their season's over. So why not go get a guy who's running back 11 on this week? So yeah, Latavius Murray's got to be the number 1 ad this week.
Going to go out and get Treylon Burks as well. If Treylon Burks is still available in your league, we just saw a season high in targets, season high in reception, season high in yardage. This Tennessee Titans desperately needs a spark in their passing game, and Treylon Burks was just that. If they go back to not feeding him, I would be shocked because Derrick Henry, still 28 carries, but Treylon Burks, still 8 targets. If you can get that every week out of Treylon Burks, I'd be happy. I don't think you'll get 7 for 111 every week, but if you can get that kind of volume and you add a mix of scoring in there, I'm pleased with that. So yeah, give me Treylon Burks on waivers as well.
Yep. Other players for me, Samaje Perine, but more importantly, just handcuffs.
Yes, go get your handcuffs.
Just different players like that. That you have these good running backs, but they might be injured already or injury prone moving forward. So definitely looking at handcuff running backs.
Yeah, and the last one we brought up, Demarcus Robinson. I'm intrigued by 8 targets and 9 targets in 2 of the past 3 games for the Ravens. Yep. I'm intrigued in that. I would go out and make him a deep bench stash in a handful of my leagues. But I'm with you. After Demarcus Robinson, after Latavius Murray, after Treylon Burks, Samaje Perine because of Joe Mixon's concussion, go get your handcuffs now.
Yep.
Let waivers run tonight, and then go get your handcuff. I don't think. Here's what I'll say. I don't think you need to super prioritize high waiver ad, high fab on your handcuffs. But let waivers run tonight. Samaje Perine's the only one. If I'm a Joe Mixon manager, I'm going out and busting my neck for.
Yeah. The only other one that if you have no one on your bench, pretty much and you just need to fill a spot, Odell Beckham if he's out there.
Yes.
Just because he's probably going to pick a team this next week. I mean, obviously he's coming off his 2nd ACL injury, so it's not like we have crazy high expectations for him. But if you've got a bench spot open, I think he's definitely worth an ad.
The other thing is, too, he was eyeing the Cowboys and the Giants as his final 2 teams, and now you lost Wandale for the season. I'd be willing to bet he lands on the Giants shortly after Thanksgiving.
That'd be crazy going back.
Anything you want to add before we wrap out the episode?
You got to keep preparing your team for a championship run now. I mean, these are the weeks to do it. You're eyeing that waiver wire. You're looking for guys like Rashad Penny or Amon-Ra last year. These are the guys that are going to, if you have an injury, help change the way your roster looks. So, got to be working those waiver wires.
Highly important. Make sure you're on top of that. I'm at Lucas Munsell on Twitter, Camlaw317 for Cameron. Make sure to follow the Fellas accounts as well. FFFellas on Twitter, the FFFellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. New fantasy football content for you all every single day over there.
Mm-hmm.
Subscribe to the podcast as well so you know when new episodes are coming out. Turn on those notifications. Join our chalkboard. Any fantasy football questions, somebody will get to you over there. It is a guaranteed answer. It is a guaranteed advice column. That's what it is. You're no longer waiting on our videos, on other experts' videos. Go to our chalkboard. Down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Tyler, we miss you. We miss you dearly. Brings a tear to our eye. Two Stooges being dudes of fantasy football, fellas. We will see you. I guess that episode comes out on Thanksgiving, doesn't it?
Yeah, it would have.
We'll see if we get to we'll see if we get to a game preview or not. If we don't this week, it's because it comes out on Thanksgiving and we won't have time to post it. Stay tuned though. That's why you should be making sure to follow our other socials because we will be dropping content over there every day this week still. We will talk to you all soon. Likely be starting Saturday though. We'll see you all then. Deuces.